Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today's question is, can I analyze the case of Jake Evans? Just a reminder, I'm not diagnosing anybody in this video, only speculating about what could be happening in a situation like this. If you enjoyed this video, please like it, subscribe to my channel, and consider supporting me on Patreon. I'll put the link to Patreon in the description for this video. First, I'll look at the background of this case, move to the timeline of the crime, offer a summary of the confession, then move to my analysis. Jacob Ryan Evans was born on May 22, 1995, and lived in Alida, Texas. This is about 20 minutes west of Fort Worth. Jacob went by the name Jake. His father was named Daryl, and his mother was named Jamie. Jake had 3 sisters, Emily, Audrey, and Mallory. He went to a local high school until January of 2012, when he started homeschooling. His sister Mallory was also being homeschooled at that time. She had been pulled out of school in 2010. Jake lived in a house on River Creek Lane, which is in a gated community. The house was on 2 acres. It was across the street from his grandparents' house. Jake's grandfather had been a police officer in Fort Worth for 27 years. Before moving to the timeline of the crime, let's hear a word from today's sponsor, Factor. Too busy with your end-of-summer goals to cook, but want to make sure you're eating well? With Factor, skip the chopping, preparation, and cleaning up, as well as the extra trip to the grocery store, while still getting the flavor and nutritional quality you need. Factor's fresh, never-frozen meals are ready in just 2 minutes, so all you have to do is heat and enjoy. Factor helps you avoid takeout and ordering in with delicious and nutritious, no-nonsense food that's ready quickly. Factor's chef-prepared meals make it easy to eat well, so you never have to opt for something that isn't good for you. Factor is my go-to solution for dinner after a long day of researching, analyzing, and recording. Factor helps me to stay efficient and to avoid wasting time on cooking or going to the grocery store. Head to Factor75.com or click the link below and use code DrGrande50 to get 50% off your first Factor box. That's 50% off your first Factor box at Factor75.com, DrGrande50. Now moving to the timeline of the crime. On October 3, 2012, Jake's father was out of town. His sisters, Emily and Audrey, no longer lived at the house. The only occupants were 17-year-old Jake, his 48-year-old mother, Jamie, and his 15-year-old sister, Mallory. Late on October 3, or early on October 4, Jake used a .22 caliber revolver, which he had stolen from his grandfather, to murder his mother and his sister. At 12:34 a.m., Jake called 911. When the operator asked, "What's the emergency?" Jake responded, quote, "I just killed my mother and my sister," unquote. He went on to say that he shot them with a .22 caliber revolver. The operator asked if there was any reason that he was so angry with his mother and sister. Jake responded, quote, "I don't know. It's weird. I wasn't even really angry with them. It just kind of happened. I've been kind of planning on killing for a while now," unquote. The operator asked if it was the 2 of them or just anybody. Jake responded, "Pretty much anybody." The operator asked why. Jake offered a rambling response. He said he didn't really like people's attitudes. People are verbally rude to each other. He felt like his family was suffocating him. And Jake said, quote, "I don't know. I'm pretty, I guess, evil. Whatever. I'm sorry," unquote. He went on to explain that he was worried about having nightmares. He asked if there was any type of medication that he could take. He claimed that he had never done anything violent in his entire life. Jake stayed on the phone with the operator until the police arrived about 25 minutes later and arrested him. He was charged with capital murder of multiple persons. He was placed in a mental health facility until 2015, when he was found competent to stand trial. He pleaded guilty to 2 counts of murder and received 45 years in prison. Jake Evans will be eligible for parole in 22 and a half years. When factoring in the time served, he could be out in 20 years. On the day that Jake was arrested, he supplied the police with a 3.5-page written confession. Many people hoped that Jake's confession would provide answers to his perplexing decision to commit the murders. Here is a summary of the confession. Much of this is paraphrased. I've also organized the events differently to make more sense. Jake talked about how he had been at the allergist on October 3. His sister made a racist comment about a black man who was mowing the grass. Jake and his sister argued about this, and while they were in the car riding home, he called her a racist blank. For the third time that week, Jake decided to watch the 2007 movie Halloween, which is a remake of the 1978 movie. The movie is about a killer named Michael Myers who has psychopathic personality traits. While watching the scene where the young Michael Myers commits murder, Jake was struck by how Michael was at ease during the murders and had little remorse. Jake thought that it would be the same for him if he were to commit murder. After watching the movie, he put it back in the case and threw it away. He did not want people to think that the movie influenced what he was going to do. Jake went outside and hit golf balls for about an hour. He re-entered his house at 5:30 p.m. and thought about how he was going to commit the murders. His plan was to kill his sister Mallory and then his mother Jamie. After this, he was going to walk to his grandparents' house and kill them, as well as his oldest sister, Emily. His other sister, Audrey, was going to be visiting from college in the morning. He was going to kill her when she arrived. Jake took a trip with his mother, and they picked up dinner. He ate it at the pool house and watched the television show Family Guy. At around 9 p.m., Jake went upstairs. His sister Mallory asked him if he wanted to watch a movie, but Jake turned her down because of their earlier argument. Mallory went to her room, and Jake went downstairs to retrieve a knife. He went upstairs and paced back and forth, thinking about how he could cause Mallory pain. He focused on the times when she had hurt his feelings or had angered him. At 9:30 p.m., Jake knocked on Mallory's door and asked if she wanted to watch the 1998 movie Waterboy. She said yes and sat on a couch upstairs. Jake went to the art room and imagined what it would be like to murder his sister. He did this for about a half hour before sitting on the couch with her. About 5 minutes later, he initiated a pillow fight with Mallory. Jake was still thinking about murdering her and his mother, but he did not want them to feel any pain. So he had been thinking about causing Mallory pain, but now that idea was not as appealing. Instead of using a knife, he decided to use a .22 caliber revolver that he had stolen from his grandfather. Jake told his sister that he needed to go downstairs for a little bit. After confirming that his mother was in the study, Jake retrieved the revolver and placed it on his bed. Jake walked around the house contemplating his actions. He thought about how his life would never be the same after he murdered his family. He recognized that he would never see any of them again. Jake went back upstairs at 11:15 p.m. About 5 minutes later, he knocked on Mallory's door and told her that their mother needed her. He pointed the revolver at his sister. She thought that he was joking, but he was not. He shot her in the back and then in the head. Jake ran downstairs, entered the study, and shot his mother 3 times. He then ran to his room screaming about how he was really messed up. Right after he unloaded the revolver, he realized that his sister was still alive. Jake loaded the weapon and shot his sister again. He also shot his mother again to make sure that she was dead. With the murders completed, Jake called 911. Toward the end of the confession, Jake talked about how teenagers are emotionally cruel to one another. He believed that people who bullied others, had racist tendencies, or were full of themselves were really the evil ones. He was sad because his family members were transforming into the people that he hated. At the very end of the confession, Jake wrote, quote, "I know now, though, that I'm done with killing. It's the most dreadful and terrifying thing I will ever experience, and what happened last night will haunt me forever." Unquote. Now moving to my analysis. Here are my thoughts on a few areas that stood out to me in this case. Item number 1. Jake Evans was described as a nice student and an avid golfer. People said that he was quiet, shy, and kept to himself. He had never been violent before, and no one could understand his actions. The homicidal behavior came out of the blue. There's the sense that Jake was struggling to control his impulses. On one side, he was being pushed by psychopathic and sadistic traits. On the other side was his sense of morality, which restrained him from bad acts, at least for a while. Item number 2. When Jake was watching the remake of Halloween, he strongly identified with the killer, Michael Myers. He did not perceive the character as someone to be afraid of. He wasn't disgusted by Michael. He wasn't excited by the character. Rather, he viewed Michael as someone to emulate, like a hero. Jake also connected with the character's feelings, or lack thereof. He was empathizing with the character, amazed and inspired by Michael's lack of remorse. I think this is because Jake desperately wanted to know what it was like to kill someone. It didn't matter who. The problem he had with this desire had nothing to do with morality. Rather, Jake was concerned about his own suffering afterward. He did not want his conscience to bother him. Jake learned from Michael Myers that maybe this would not be a problem. If he could be like Michael, Jake would not have to suffer. Michael Myers didn't teach Jake how to kill. He taught Jake to dismiss potential emotional consequences, to seize the day and move forward with a homicidal plan without worrying about the future. Michael was a role model because he did not experience guilt or shame. Observing Michael in the movie helped Jake to connect and appreciate his own psychopathic characteristics, like a lack of empathy, a lack of remorse, and a lack of guilt. Item number 3. Jake said that he disposed of the movie so people would not know that it influenced him. I think that Jake wanted to appear original, like it was his idea and he didn't need to find courage from a movie character. Perhaps this was about Jake's narcissism. He wanted to be known as a leader, not a follower. Item number 4. Jake tried to justify his bad acts by claiming that his sister was racist and that all his family members were transforming into something awful. This was just a rationalization. Jake was being driven by a desire to kill, and he needed a reason to feel better about the moral component. He was trying to alleviate his own guilt and shame by painting his victims as evil. Jake was trying to sell the idea that he was doing the world a favor. His actions were necessary. He wasn't killing innocent victims, but rather he was killing future monsters. Jake also considered himself evil, so he was bringing his victims down to his level. Item number 5. As Jake struggled with his decision to commit murder, he was looking for ways to bypass his own conscience. For example, when he found himself bothered by the thoughts of causing his sister pain, he thought about all the times when his sister had offended him. He was trying to replace feelings of compassion, loyalty, and love by activating feelings of hate, frustration, anger, and rage. Jake was manipulating his own emotions. He was trying to connect with his dark side, to let that side of him win the battle of his mind. Item number 6. Jake offered a description of his thought process leading up to the murders. He had all the time in the world to consider his actions. Jake fully recognized that he would be going to prison, people would hate him, and he would never see his family members again. Jake absolutely knew the difference between right and wrong. He was nervous about moving forward, but he could not resist his sadistic tendencies. He did not react to some dramatic moment. Rather, this was a carefully planned crime. Jake never mentioned anything related to hallucinations or delusions. He was able to carefully weigh the consequences of his actions, and he chose to commit the murders. Moving to the last item, number 7, what do I think happened in this case? This is just a theory, my opinion. Jake appeared to be cold, callous, manipulative, self-centered, sadistic, vindictive, and had a lack of empathy. It appears as though Jake had a strong desire to murder someone. His family was the most accessible, so he selected them as his victims. In order to remove the constraints of morality, Jake placed Michael Myers on a pedestal, pretended that his family members were becoming monsters, and activated destructive emotions. He was not going to let anything stand in the way of getting what he wanted. After the murders, he stopped investing energy into homicidal thoughts. He was flooded with feelings of remorse and shame, which he had only pushed just below the surface, long enough to kill. These feelings helped him to gain sympathy from the court and to negotiate a favorable plea deal. Now moving to my final thoughts. Sometimes when people look at a killer, they perceive a person who made an impulsive decision under terrible circumstances. This is sometimes true, but on other occasions, killers know exactly what they're doing. They carefully plan crimes being fully aware of the consequences. This often involves high levels of psychopathy and narcissism, two traits that are not likely to significantly improve over time. In the last part of Jake's confession, he talked about how he was a victim too. His actions would haunt him forever. In reality, his actions will excite and satisfy him forever. When Jake Evans gets out of prison, he will once again have an opportunity to grapple with the decision between right and wrong. There is no reason to believe the winner of that inevitable struggle will be any different than it was before. Those are my thoughts on the case of Jake Evans. Please put any opinions and thoughts in the comment section. They always generate an interesting dialogue. As always, I hope you found my analysis of this topic to be informative. Thanks for watching.